All right. Well, good day, everyone, and welcome to webinar about web scraping trends and challenges for 2025. In today's world, when everything is moving at a neck-breaking speed and generative AI models are released weekly, data is more important than ever. With machine-generated internet traffic rising to 50% in 24 from 30% in 23, seems like everyone is doing web scraping or at least wants to. So whether you are a fellow scraper or want to get in on the action, you've come to the right place. We have a very interesting webinar for you lined up today with seasoned industry experts who will share their knowledge about the web scraping industry challenges, trends, and also share their advice. We are certain that in the next 40 minutes or so, you will learn a lot about web scraping, and also you will be able to ask questions. So use this opportunity to get as much knowledge from our experts as you can. And without further ado, we have a great panel of experts. We have Jonny Smyth, we have Glenn Vandamme, and Vikranth Ramanolla. And I will ask each of you guys to introduce yourselves. So Jonny, we'll start with you. Who are you and what do you do?
Hey guys, nice to hear you all today or see you all today. I'm Jonny. I'm the co-founder and CTO of Ceartas. We are a brand protection company working both in the content creation space and the enterprise space. Super excited to be here with you today. Thank you.
Perfect. Glenn, would you do an intro, please?
All right. Hi, I'm Glenn. I'm the CISO at Lighthouse. We're a data company offering a range of applications, data services to hotels and hospitality companies. Kind of started here 10 years ago, where I first heavily focused on the first web scrapers and the foundation of our crawler infrastructure, so to say. And today I'm more involved in a broad range of topics, from platform teams, infrastructure, security, as well as crawlers, of course.
Sounds like a lot of work.
It is.
All right, and Vikranth, thank you for joining us. Please introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me today. I'm Vikranth. I'm the co-founder and CTO at DataWeave. And I lead technology, infrastructure, and also the data acquisition teams at DataWeave. And DataWeave builds data products around competitive intelligence to help retailers and consumer brands to stay competitive and increase their top line in the online marketplaces. So I have close to 13 years experience writing my first crawler at DataWeave to building the entire stack around running large-scale web application. Right? So, yeah, looking forward for the discussion.
Perfect, thank you. And finally, it's me. I'm your host, Giedrius Šteimantas. I'm an engineering manager over at Oxylabs. I manage the scraper APIs and web and blocker teams. So my daily work is making sure that everybody's getting their data, the data is correct, and data is on time. And so without further ado, let's jump right into the discussion about current landscape of web scraping. So Jonny, perhaps we can start with you. With the current technological advancements, how do you see the current web scraping landscape right now?
Yeah, so I think that, in recent years, the current landscape has changed quite a bit from, your traditional HTTP requests and network requests, moving into a necessity to have more emulated browsers. Obviously, with the advent of the likes of large language models, opens up a lot of doors for more dynamic scraping, understanding data faster, understanding data more autonomously, and even unlocking websites in the sense of agnostic crawlers. With the intelligence that's come around in the last couple of years with the likes of large language models, we can see almost semi-autonomous or autonomous crawlers that can map websites that we've never seen before. This is some of the trends that we've kind of noticed at Ceartas in the last while, and something we're trying to lean into heavily to kind of unlock as many different endpoints as possible.
Right. Anybody have anything to add?
Yeah. So there is also a growing need of data requirements on an ongoing basis, right? It's largely driven by two things, because on a day-to-day basis, a lot more content is getting generated online. A lot of businesses are moving online, right? And even after pandemic, a lot more activities got automated, especially in retail sector, like curbside pickup or merging your offline online inventories and everything. So there's a lot of data coming in. And we're also seeing that the entry for barrier around web scraping has been increasing. Right, it's not very easy these days. there are various content like rendering strategies that websites use, which means there's a lot of complexity around tools and ecosystem that's available. Like there's a lot to cover and requires a lot of expertise to operate in this space these days.
Yeah. So Vikranth, you're saying that the barriers are increasing, but you also have a lot of these low-code platforms and other tools or scraper APIs emerging. Would you say that for an average user, is it easier to get into web scraping or harder these days?
It is harder for an average user to get started on their own, but some of these cloud services definitely will help to get started. But it is not uniform across the board, right? Like there are websites which are easier to scrape, but there are also websites which are extremely difficult to scrape.
I think there's both sides to the stories. On one hand, like it's becoming really difficult to get started today because like also anti-bot challenges and things like that have become so much more complex than they were 10 years ago, basically. But at the same time, like Giedrius, you should know, like there's a lot of managed offerings. There's a lot of the scraper API, weapon blocker, things like that can help to get started and can help to get those first data sets off the ground, basically.
Yes, definitely. I mean, this is what we do, and this is what we strive to provide to our customers. That they shouldn't care about all of the technicalities. They should only care about the data that they're getting. But in terms of industry adoption in the current landscape, do you see that more and more industries are adopting web scraping?
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in on that. I suppose, yeah, like I think you hit the nail on the head at the start of the webinar there. With the advent of Gen AI and all these things that are happening in this artificial intelligence world, everybody's keen to get their hands on data at whatever cost. And, with web scraping being the fastest path to find these very bespoke data sets that people maybe want, or to find things to train models and whatever they want, I think that this is definitely something that is, it's becoming more and more.
Yeah, I think to add on, everyone is trying to look for alternative data, right? External data sources to basically augment your internal data to take better decisions. And there is a lot more and more data that's getting available in the public domain. So I guess every industry, every tech teams or every data teams are looking for web scraping.
Yeah, indeed, and even next to the AI models, which are hungry for textual data and for broad resources. Like even for us, we mainly focus more on pricing, but there you see an increased demand for like frequency of updates, volume of updates, things like that. So definitely on all sides of the spectrum.
Today I had a discussion with a person from communications, and they just a communication kind of agency. They were doing an article about password security and password requirements, and they asked us if you could scrape like thousands of websites, and figure out, what kind of password requirements they have. And for me, this was an illustration, of how scraping has become, common knowledge. 5-10 years ago, nobody from communications would actually, think of scraping and doing an automated analysis on content. So for me, that speaks volumes, in terms of how scraping got more and more popular, and it is. I wouldn't go as far and say that it's becoming the household term, but it's definitely becoming industry term when people working with digital.
Yeah, and I think this is a super cool point as well, that like this use case of finding what the password requirements are for different websites. And I think, 10 years ago, to maybe even achieve something like that, you would have had to spend a lot of time developing very specific web scrapers, thinking about all the if this, then that aspect of how all these different websites are constructed from the HTML or the JavaScript. And I think now, obviously, with being the buzzword towards the end of 2024 and now into 2025, this agentic AI approach where creating agents to do jobs that people would have done before. And I think with this agentic aspect on the horizon of 2025, I think we're going to see a lot of very specific requests from people looking to do very specific things on websites, such as your password control aspect.
Definitely. Definitely. And these new markets or new use cases, they bring a lot of new technical challenges. But moving on to the technical challenges, I would like for you guys to also think about and maybe name some challenges that you have either every day or in general with web scraping.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first one that comes probably to everybody's mind here is getting caught as a bot. It's the kind of making yourself not look like you're scraping, even though you are scraping. And obviously, this is an ongoing challenge, I think, that's not going to go anywhere. And yeah, at some point, it gets almost a bit intrusive for the actual user. They can go to some of these websites out there, and even they have to pass 50 different challenges, and it becomes a very counterintuitive user experience for the user who's just looking to genuinely go onto these websites. So I think that this is definitely a challenge that we're still facing. There's obviously creative and innovative new ways to try and get past this, best practices to follow. But yeah, that's definitely something we still face every day.
That's a very interesting point you mentioned. So, if end users are going to start using, let's say, agents or whatever, in their daily lives, the websites, the targets, they will have to kind of adapt even more to kind of distinguish what is the actual user, what is the user's agent, and what is the actual bot that is trying to scrape me. So I think for web scrapers and for these anti-bot systems, the field is getting more and more complicated every day.
Yeah, just to add on, I think bot blocking is one big challenge, right? Like getting blocked. There is a lot of newer tools and technologies that are coming to detect bots and block them. And also at the same time, there is growing need for data on the other side, right? Where you also you need more data and also at a faster frequency. And managing your infrastructure and the costs involved in crawling is also one big challenge, right? Also at the same time, when you're scraping data from the public web, it is kind of unstructured and could have a lot of incomplete data or quality issues, right? Dealing with after crawling, post crawling, how do you deliver high quality data is also a big challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. Like for us, we've always very much focused on like data quality and traceability from day one. So like every single request we send out, we track the status of basically. But that has proven to be quite fundamental to delivering data quality like we want to do. At the same time, like same as my colleagues are saying, like challenges with anti-bot and for us specifically around volume and getting not detected as a bot on certain volumes is definitely the number one challenge today.
Yeah. Have you faced any challenges in regards to JavaScript heavy websites?
Yeah, definitely. Especially in our domain, there are a lot of websites which provide a lot of rich information, right? Which means for user experience, you need to maybe perform certain user actions on a given website to reveal certain information. Especially and also in retail, a lot of times you need to click to expand to reveal an offer or the latest price around it, right? A lot of websites are getting very creative with respect to primarily for enhancing user experience and also to a certain extent block bot activity. They deploy some of these strategies. And running a JavaScript rendered page is also quite expensive from an infrastructure standpoint. So managing all of this it requires a very effective strategy around it.
Indeed, I wouldn't say like for us, the JavaScript rendering is necessarily a technical challenge, but it does impact the economics of everything, and needing to render every page versus just requesting it through Python or whatever the language of choice is, of course, makes a huge difference at scale.
Definitely pricing and of course time, how fast you can get the data. And
Yeah, but I think that's just generally the way that things are potentially going to go. It's this cat and mouse situation that we find ourselves in. Endpoints don't want to be scraped, but we still want to scrape them. So at some point in time, the kind of cost per scrape, let's say, is going to have to go up because there's going to be more resource intensive processes that needed to be done to achieve said endpoints. I think this is going to be a casualty of war. Mind the pun,
Yeah, I think it's getting quite intense, and you guys mentioned data quality issues as well. And I think when data quality and anti-bot systems is intertwined, for example, like what do I mean by that? Is sometimes when you scrape something and they detect you that you're scraping, they're not blocking you right away. They start feeding you bad data or random data. Do you have any strategies how to combat that? That is a hard question, I know.
Try to find a way to detect it, I would say, which is sometimes difficult, but often there is something there. Must also say that this is not something we have encountered very often. Like we've seen it a few times, but like overall, what we see, like a lot of these websites are relying on the more classic anti-bot vendors, and very often they don't go through the level of detail of actually faking data or mocking data, which is a lot more of a custom bespoke implementation for that website rather than a generic plug and play solution.
Definitely.
Yeah. So in our domain, what we see is sometimes we see stale data or you see duplicate content, or a lot of times you get limited with respect to, let's say, pagination, right? Like you're trying to paginate and then you can't scroll beyond or navigate beyond a certain page, right? So understanding how the website works, behaves, and deploying an effective crawl strategy will help you get over some of these challenges. Rather than trying to just spider the web, given a website, you need to have a very good crawl strategy with respect to which links you want to follow and how do you want to collect data from.
All right, moving on. The emerging trends on web scraping. So I would like to ask each of you guys to name some emerging trends in web scraping that you personally find exciting.
Yeah. So I kind of maybe touched on this a little bit before, so I jumped the gun a little bit. However, definitely this agentic approach and mimicking human behavior through, utilizing large language models to understand websites that you've never seen before, and turning these into agents that are able to do jobs autonomously and able to act with some degree of consciousness on the web. And mimic what a human would be doing. Like we went back to this finding passwords, the laws of each password on a web. Exactly. I feel like we're definitely going to see a lot of these agentic agents or agentic AIs on the web that are doing jobs that are, that would have typically been done by, human farms to search things on the internet, or would have been having, a huge code base that would involve like thousands and thousands of lines of codes that would have to handle all these if this then that cases. And I feel like with as I said before, the advent of large language models, large vision models as well, and this agentic AI approach, we're going to find a lot of maybe not intelligent bots, but as close to intelligence on the web as possible, where they can navigate and deal with all these different things. One thing that I think of right now is that if we imagine the internet as an unstructured environment, like if we think of robotics, robots being in unstructured environments, I feel like the internet, web scraping is kind of like an unstructured environment or a semi-structured environment, and the agents are going to be these robots that are autonomously navigating through them. So I think that this is going to be a huge emerging technology in 2025. I see a lot of this stuff on LinkedIn posts and blog posts, people trying to crack the code on this, and I think we're going to see a lot of headway definitely in 2025 with respect to autonomous agents on the web, essentially.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of action there, and I think industry is going to have to change and adapt to that.
Yeah, for sure.
Glenn, or Glenn, sorry, how do you, what do you see as an exciting emerging trend?
Well, I think the past year and a half, 2 years, basically, with the advent of LLMs, like it has brought a lot of efficiencies for development. Like, I think really general and high level things like GitHub Copilot and stuff like that makes it a lot faster to develop and to iterate quickly. But at the same time, for crawlers specifically, there's interesting use cases, like some of the mundane day-to-day tasks, fixing your XPods that are broken for a certain website, things like that. I think it's exciting to start experimenting with that and look at like self-healing data extraction pipelines, things like that is super interesting. At the same time, like reverse engineering specific targets, like figuring out what obfuscated code does left or right can be tricky, but LLMs can greatly assist in looking and trying to understand how a target website works, basically.
Yeah, agree. Just to add on, I guess also at the same time, AI also is being used to detect bots and then block them, right? I would like to also add on to what Glenn and Jonny has covered. Definitely, it is becoming easier to develop bots, primarily with respect to navigating a website and extracting data and ensuring the quality of the data, validating your data automatically. All of this are definitely becoming easier. And also at the same time, there is increasing needs for real-time crawling, right? Like, because with a lot of generative AI, right, things have become easier, right, and more accessible, which means there is this requirement for real-time data crawling as well, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think one other thing which is comes to my mind as we talk about this is, I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with the dead internet theory. One concern I would have is, LLMs are great, and I'm a huge advocate for LLMs, 100%. I'm a huge advocate for AI, but I read an interesting article that Stack Overflow used to be the place that people would go to, like, I have a problem with something, the community would come in and help out. And I worry that we become maybe a bit too reliant on the large language models, and then the innovation from the human point of view isn't going to innovate and go past some of the obstacles. So the large language models answering a lot of our questions may end up having us tunnel visioned into a certain point, and maybe we get to a point where we're not innovating in places with real human brain power because we don't think as much. So this is maybe another drawback of this AI approach, as opposed to it being all beneficial, just to point that out.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. But to counter that, I would say, that a lot of more complex stuff is being done. Like, for example, like we saw, like in the past year or so, releases of some patched browsers that are patched, like in the source code, not on JavaScript level, but actually in the source code before it's compiled. And it's hundreds of thousands of lines of code. And in order to make sense of it, and to kind of patch the leaks where they're actually leaking information to antibots, they're probably using some sort of LLM, probably to find the relevant places and then go and patch them, and that's being available the whole process much faster and much easier to achieve by a single individual.
Yeah, very, very, very good point. Very, very good point. This is also, it's cat and mouse.
Yeah, so it's a very interesting time to be alive, definitely.
Yes.
All right. Anything else about the emerging trends that you guys are excited about?
I think in general, like it's been covered a few times already, but with the advent of these LLMs, just the need for data, and I mean the agentic approach is very much true, and then there's the data needs for to train those LLMs basically. But at the same time, like if we look ahead at the future, I think the search engines and the Googles of this world are a bit worried about what the future looks like, because how those LLMs work and how we can feed data and interconnect with them is a whole new industry on its own, which is exciting. Like, it brings new opportunities for data companies as well, for sure.
Definitely. Vikranth, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I guess I agree on the newer opportunities, especially because of more data being available. And also at the same time, I'm also a little worried about the new restrictions and maybe that websites might impose with respect to data collection around this. And a lot of data could go behind a login. So especially for us, we collect data in the public web. So that's another thing that we need to think about, right? So yeah. And also at the same time, I guess you also already covered about the custom browsers, right? Like because of generative AI, there are also a lot of lightweight browsers that are being developed, which also will help us in a way to maybe run scraping at scale on our side as well, because there are newer tools coming in which will maybe help us reduce our infra footprint and also maybe reduce turnaround times for executing the code.
Yeah, I think, Vikranth, you touched a very good point there about like how maybe emerging trends from the everything being behind logins. And I'm sure you guys have also seen, like we discussed briefly before, this aspect of they almost make you jump through 10 hoops and, you know, run to your car, come back in, you know, do 10 skips before you can log into some websites these days. And I think one thing that's going to be detrimental for these websites is that, you know, people nowadays don't want to wait. If you think of it from me, the perspective as an internet browser or an internet user searching on the web for something, wanting to buy a product, wanting to look up something, if I'm having to go through all of these various different hoops to get something that used to take me 10 seconds to go and find as a user, I think these people are going to be deterred from these websites. And at some point, there's going to have to be some sort of equilibrium between, hey, we accept that our website is going to get scraped. We don't make it super easy, but at the same time, there has to be some sort of like give and take for this. Otherwise, people, especially, you know, if you think about, in my opinion, people nowadays spend a lot of time in social media. Attention spans are maybe a little bit less than what they were for many years before. I don't think people want to be spending all this time going through all this rigmarole to get a piece of data that they could have got very snappily before. So I think we're going to see a lot of weird and wonderful things happen in the coming future with regards to making it hard to get into a website or not, or maybe there's going to be more, I don't know, allowing of the scraping to happen as things become more reliant on all the data out there.
Right. But at the same time, you see big websites, really huge websites, leaders in the industry, which actually are not minding that they are being scraped, or even they actually advise people to like, hey, just scrape it. We're not going to provide an API. Go ahead and scrape it, and it's very easy to do it. And they're doing it themselves. Like everybody's doing it. They're doing it themselves, and they just say like, just scrape us. Like it's not a problem. Well, some are like safeguarding their public data, like it was like I don't know,
gold dust.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a good point, right? On the weird aspects of things, we've been talking about the positive side of bot activity, right? Like we're trying to collect information either to automate or make or solve a problem or make someone's life easier. But also at the same time, there is a negative side of it where there's a lot of bad bot traffic, right? And some of these websites deploy some of these strategies also to protect themselves from the bad bot activity, right? Which in turn impacts good bot activity as well, right? So in our industry, we're also observing that there are certain websites which deploy very aggressive tactics with respect to blocking to an extent where it impacts actual users as well, right? Like where even actual users get thrown very hard captchas or fully blocked, saying the activity looks suspicious. So yeah, it's a whole wide spectrum. So yeah, navigating requires a lot of patience.
I think also like from a website's owner perspective, let's say you do e-commerce. Like in the end, your goal is making sales and making conversions. And it's finding a balance with not hindering your users to make that experience as smooth as possible. At the same time, if you have bad bots, as you call them, which cause a load that impact infrastructure, that impact the website, it's a balancing between blocking them just to keep your customers or your customers' experience safe. So yeah, I think we should just be mindful about that as well, and kind of look at it from the other lens for sure.
I'm pretty sure, I mean, if you're doing scraping at scale, you have to do it properly, right?
Yeah.
I mean, all of us are operating large infrastructures, and if you're not careful, you can probably take some sites down. So or cause a significant headache for the engineering teams, and we definitely don't want to do that. I think Glenn, you touch a really important point that scraping has to be done correctly and politely.
Yeah, moral obligation, eh?
Yes.
All right, but very interesting discussion, guys. But I would like to steer the conversation towards the application of scraping. We probably have some people who have never done scraping before, and would like to get kind of a practical, a picture of what the scraping is being used for. So I'd like to ask each and one of you to share how you are using scraping in your product, in your operations, and so what's the industry application in your case. So maybe Vikranth, we can start with you.
Yeah, so at DataWeave, we build data products primarily for retailers and consumer brands, right? So we have kind of two products. For retailers, we help them track price competitiveness, right? So that they can stay competitive in the pricing market, and which also in turn helps them increase their conversions on their respective retail marketplaces, right? We also, another use case is around assortment intelligence. It's basically with respect to helping a retailer or a category manager at a retailer understand what products or what selection of products I have compared to my competition, and then what are my gaps, right? So to do that, it requires us to scrape the data, do the comparison analysis, right? And also at the same time, for brands, we have another product which we call as digital self-analytics. It's primarily to help brands understand how discoverable they are on the online marketplaces, because every marketplace they are competing with similar brands, so they want to know how discoverable their products are, right? So when someone searches for running shoe, which brand comes up and which brand doesn't come up, right? Like where do we stand? Where are your ad spends going in with respect to what kind of products are getting promoted on marketplaces? And how does your content quality impact your discoverability on the marketplaces? So all of this requires us to scrape large amounts of data from the web and basically process it and enrich that information and then derive these insights. Right? So these are some use cases primarily from the retail industry that we build products around.
Thank you for sharing. Exciting stuff. Glenn, would you be so kind and share your application of scraping?
Definitely. So actually, kind of similar to what Vikranth said. Like we do everything with scraping that's related to like optimal price setting, but then for hotels. Think from small hotels all the way up to the large chains, like we all know. And anything that's related or that can impact the price. Think if events are happening in your city or things like that, and you want to price your hotel room accordingly. But maybe a bit more of an exotic use case, which people don't always immediately think about. And it's kind of crazy, actually. Like you can have a hotel yourself. You're a small mom and pop hotel with 20 rooms or something like that. Like nowadays, you can easily appear on like 50, 60, 70 different websites selling your rooms, some of which you're not even aware of yourself, some of which you're not even like determining the prices for yourself, which is actually a whole problem in this space. And some people like this is people don't expect that if you talk about price setting for hotels, but just monitoring that, because in the end, what a hotel wants is it's one physical room, and if it's for tomorrow night and they don't sell it for tomorrow night, like it's gone. There's no more chance to sell it, right?
Yeah.
So we kind of help them track this price parity across different channels, across everything online. But sometimes things happen. It's a large ecosystem. And we help them flag that. We help them discover that and see what's going wrong, basically, in their pricing strategy.
So do you have any tips on how to get a good price on a hotel room?
Oh, that's a difficult one. I think the large websites are out there that give great overviews. I think another tip I can share, like often you get a discount if you look from your phone or from certain other things. If you register or sign up, you can get some discount. And let's say if you try a few of those different things together, you usually get the best price you can get.
It's much like scraping, right?
Yeah.
Jokes aside, Johnny, would you be so kind and share your use case with web scraping?
Yeah. So our use case is slightly different. Being in the brand protection space, initially we started out looking after content creators. Obviously, during the times of Corona, the number of content creators that were doing this for monetary reasons kind of exploded. So with this, kind of people started stealing their content more, redistributing without their consent, remonetizing it without their consent. So essentially, our company started off initially by finding people's content online that they hadn't distributed under their appropriate channels, verifying that this was their content, and then having it removed. Think of the likes of YouTubers, people on Patreon, Masterclass, Fansly, Fanfics, OnlyFans, all of these paid subscription platforms. That's how we initially started out. Now we so essentially finding their content online, verifying it from a vision point of view, from a text point of view. And now we're moving into the enterprise space and doing this more for the anti-piracy aspect, counterfeit goods, and applying our scraping technology to these different use cases. So essentially trying to put the money back into the pockets of the content creators or businesses who've spent a lot of money and time and effort, to build up their brands, to develop their brands. Another aspect of what we're currently doing as well and offering is web scraping across social media platforms to find copycat accounts. We're also scraping the web for deepfakes. We've developed proprietary deepfake detection technology, which allows us to understand if a video has been generated through generative AI, whether it's been deepfaked, face swapped. And up until now, we've actually removed 3 million deepfaked images and videos from the web. I think we're the only company of our kind doing this at the point in time. So we developed some nice technology, and now we're kind of just trying to see what different industries we can use it in. And yeah, so far so good with this. It's quite interesting use cases, especially the deepfake ones. I'm sure everybody's keeping up to date, or for those who aren't keeping up to date, deepfake technology and Gen AI is getting really, really scary at the minute. Certain cases, it's really hard to tell with the naked eye if something has been deepfaked or if it is a genuine image or video. So we're expecting quite a lot of big things in the future for this, and we've developed good technology to face this.
I'm glad to hear that, because if political tension and so and elections coming up everywhere, I think that's a very, very important topic, and this is a great example of how web scraping can be used for a greater good.
100%, and yeah, like you said, you can be very fooled on the internet easily, can't you? So I think it's a bit of a moral obligation as well to try and present people with the facts of what you're finding out there. This is real, this isn't real, this has been deepfake, this has been altered in some way. So yeah, hopefully we make good strides with this.
Yeah, seems like world is getting more complicated by the day. So if I were to ask you guys to share some best practice, or just your advice for people starting out, and people who are just maybe starting to scale their scraping operations, what would your advice be?
I think everybody will probably resonate with what I'm about to say here. Patience. Be patient. It's the concept of web scraping might seem like it's not so. The idea of web scraping might not seem that it's so complex, but everything in itself is its own topic. The subtopics are big. The subtopics are big. There's quite a lot to cover, so don't get overwhelmed, start somewhere. Use services like Oxylabs offers to get yourself going, get a feel for it. But patience is definitely the thing that I would say is the biggest thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, I agree. I would also like to reiterate, patience is the key because web scraping requires you to do a lot of reverse engineering, right? And one tip I would say is understanding how a website works and how a website organizes its content and how to navigate a website will definitely help come up with a better crawling strategy. You also need a scalable infrastructure if you're trying to crawl at scale, which means you need access to a good proxy network like what Oxylabs provides. And if you're a beginner, you can get started with the web scraping APIs which are available, which can easily kickstart your journey. Also at the same time, adhere to politeness policies, right? Respect the robots.txt files and be polite when you're crawling a website. That is one big thing which helps you not get blocked, right? So yeah.
I also fully agree. Like for me, the number one rule, if you want to create a long-term sustainable crawling business, is be very mindful to not create a negative impact. Like it sounds very counterintuitive when you talk about scaling, but we actually very heavily optimized to scale as slow as possible to get everything within the business requirements, but still the least amount of load that you can generate. Make sure you avoid creating any unnecessary spikes. Make sure you kind of think about, let's say, exceptions or error scenarios. Let's say the website is having trouble to load, that you suddenly don't spam them. Basically, like with scaling a crawler infrastructure comes a lot of responsibility as well, and that will be, I think, the number one to coexist, basically, to create a sustainable business.
Yeah, it's one internet that we all share. So yeah, let's be mindful. All right. Now we're gonna go into a Q&A session. I see there are some questions, but just before we go there, let me just plug our Discord community. So I was asked to invite everybody to join our Discord community to dive into cutting-edge web scraping discussions, share insights with fellow developers, and stay ahead of industry trends. Over there, you can connect with experts, exchange best practices, and gain access to exclusive community events, resources, and also enjoy some networking opportunities. So if we may now go to the Q&A section, and right, we have some questions. Let me just go through them, and will this presentation be downloadable? Yes. All right, an interesting question. What would you use to mock TLS fingerprint while also rendering JS? Any tips?
It definitely requires a lot of deep expertise if you want to build it on your own. But there are, if you look at on GitHub, there are a lot of open source libraries which are available, which will help you manage both of these aspects. That's a good starting point. And actually be staying active on by following GitHub issues and also on some of the Discord communities, right? Like where you can discuss, brainstorm with your fellow developers, right? Are few things which will help you with all this.
Yeah. We build a lot of these things in-house because we've been doing this for a long time already, but there are a lot of interesting GitHub projects left and right, and for us it's also, of course, an important medium to stay up to date and kind of see how we can improve internal tooling, etc. So
yeah, definitely there are some open source options. I think keeping the finger on the pulse there is very, very important. If you're not, if you don't have the resources to do it in house, there are some available libraries. I suggest you really dig in there, and there are some patched browsers as well that can do that. So definitely possible. All right, another question, moving on. Do you think we'll get to a point where it's not possible to scrape a website? For example, the Google SERP. Lots of tools agencies, companies, advertisers rely on search engine scraping, but it's likely that Google will make it more difficult over time. I think it's relating to the recent changes over in at Google, where they start requiring JavaScript to render to get to the search page.
Yeah.
I think it's very important to understand their motivation of doing that. They're not doing that just to block the scraping. They're doing it for other reasons, such as fingerprinting users for better advertising experience. But that's the game. I guess that's the nature of the game, right? I mean, you never know what's going to hit you tomorrow. You can wake up and half of your target sites can be blocked. So that's basically the nature, and we just don't know. It can happen. It cannot. We'll see. What do you guys?
I think that this is definitely shows me intuitively that as time goes on and these kind of mechanisms become more advanced in terms of stopping people scraping, I think that we really need to start taking a more human-centric approach to web scraping, whether it be through the likes of emulating browsers, through the emulated browsers doing things inside there, emulating human-like actions. You know, you guys obviously at Oxylabs as well, at OxyCon talked about this emulating mouse movements to kind of exactly. So I think we're going to get to a point where for us to not look like a bot, we have to make ourselves look like more like humans, more like how a human would browse the web. Now, of course, this is not without its drawbacks. This is much more resource intensive. This obviously drives up the cost to our end customers. But I think that I don't see a way, and maybe I'm wrong, how the more difficult it gets to bypass these like anti-bot methods, that we can kind of arrive to a point where we have to just copy what humans are doing, try and make everything a bit more human-centric, a bit more agentic, as I discussed before. I'm a very big advocate of how this is probably going to be the way we go.
Great. I think that's definitely what we will have to work on each of us, to be able to scrape in this landscape that is getting more and more complicated. All right, more about Google. Are there any Google SERP cheap alternatives? Do you guys know any? I can just only suggest to go to our pricing page at oxylabs.io and check out our prices, and they're pretty low. Another question. Hello, guys. Since you all have experience in web scraping, what skills or knowledge do you think are essential to be an effective web scraper?
It's a very good question. I think something we've asked ourselves internally quite a few times as well. Like, what do you look for if you want to hire someone who is good for a web scraping role? Which we are still struggling with, by the way, if anyone's interested. But no, I would say it's important that you find people who are curious, who like to go in depth and really want to understand how stuff works. Like we talked about before, if you want to get started with web scraping, it's easy to find a few GitHub projects and stitch them together and get it to work. But yeah, you want people who look into them, who understand what's happening, who know how to patch it or how to change it. And maybe also a bit people who are creative and can think out of the box, like, what else could I try to get this to work? And I think for me, those are the two most important traits, I would say.
Yeah. I think just to add on to that, I guess it's also the mindset, right? Web scraping a lot of times is like solving a complex puzzle, right? So if you are someone who is interested in solving puzzles and have the patience to maybe solve the same problem again and again, because you never know when you can get blocked, right? And maybe a lot of putting efforts to maybe improve your skills over a period of time also.
Yeah, definitely. I would just reiterate what both Vikram and Glenn have said. Intuitive, patient, and one of the beauties I think about web scraping is the kind of eureka moment. You've struggled with a problem for, I don't know, maybe it's a day, maybe it's a week, maybe it's 2 weeks. But at some point when you do eventually get past the blocker, the feeling's like no other. You're just like, yes. And it's very satisfying. So yeah, this is the kind of things that I would look for in engineers in this field. And as Glenn has said, it's becoming harder and harder to find people who are this mindset and who really want to get into the depths of this, because there's a lot of, I don't want to say easier jobs out there, but there's a lot of jobs that don't involve such complex puzzle solving at times.
Yeah, I think you guys covered it pretty well. I think what we also look, I mean, I can just put it in the other way. We also look for this hacker kind of mentality to kind of want and need to kind of find the solution, and they're driven not by success, but they're driven by failure. So if they fail, they want to try harder and harder, and this is how you succeed, because as you mentioned in the beginning, patience and perseverance, I think those are the qualities that you look for. And of course you need some hard skills as well, right? You need some understanding about about TLS, about TCP, about HTTP, and how encryption works, and how the requests are made, and as well JavaScript as well. So it's a pretty big and wide stack of technologies that you also need to know. All right, moving on. A bit more technical question. How can we intercept, decrypt, and automate API requests from a mobile app that uses certificate pinning and dynamic authentication tokens for data extraction? That uses certificate pinning and dynamic authentication tokens for data extraction. Any thoughts?
It's it's a bit of a rabbit hole to get into, and
I don't think we have the time to cover this topic.
As you talked about before, like specific skill sets, I think this is one of them. But there are tools out there, and I think you want to maybe look around for like dynamic instrumentation and tool sets around that, and that will help you get started for sure.
Great, thank you, Glenn. All right, so before we conclude today's webinar, let's just do a little circle and share quick takeaways from what we have discussed and what you perhaps learned or reinforced today in your knowledge. Jonny, maybe we can start with you today.
Yeah, so my takeaways from today are, of course, anybody who is interested in getting into the web scraping world, have a little bit of patience, dip your toes in the water with various tools that are out there, check out some open source projects online, and there's an abundance of them. Bear in mind that the landscape in web scraping is changing just as fast as the technology that's driving it, and that artificial intelligence in the web scraping world is probably not going to go anywhere, and that it's only going to become more prevalent in this space where applicable moving forward.
All right, thank you. Vikranth.
Yeah, so one is, I guess, there is definitely increasing needs for data, which means you need to build capabilities around acquiring more data faster, especially with generative AI, things are moving very fast, which also means you need scalable infrastructure. So focus on basically building your infrastructure, partnering with the right partners is also important. And again, I would want to iterate, this is a cat and mouse game, so having a lot of patience and perseverance are also very important.
Thank you.
I think for me, again, patience is the keyword, and I concur with my two colleagues. Like 2024, a lot of people, a lot of engineers kind of thought AI was a hype, but like Jonny said, it is here to stay, and there's a lot of benefits to be had from it as well. So yeah, looking forward to finding some more web scraping applications for that.
Right. Perfect. I would like to thank you, everyone for participating in these discussions, and encouraging for everybody to keep learning, to be patient, and also be ethical around the web, right? I think those are important things, especially when scaling the scraping, your scraping initiatives. Something important to keep in mind on. And I would like to remind you this: just join our Discord community, where we'll share some resources and white papers. The community will share a lot of different knowledge, so it's important to kind of stay together and share knowledge and our experience. So thank you, everybody who listened in. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, guys. Bye-bye.